The handcuffs clicked shut, sharp and metallic, cutting through the humid Alabama afternoon like a gunshot. Officer Dale Hutchins thought he had just caught a liar. He thought the uniform folded neatly in her back seat was a cheap costume. He thought the government ID in her purse was a forgery. He was wrong. Catastrophically wrong. The woman he had just shoved against the hood of a black Audi wasn't a con artist. She was Colonel Renata Voss, a senior intelligence officer in the United States Army, less than 2 hours away from a classified briefing that colonels twice her age would never be cleared to attend. In exactly 40 minutes, Officer Hutchins and his supervisor would learn that arrogance has a price. And that price was about to be collected in full. This is the story of one traffic stop, one phone call, and the collapse of an entire police department.
Before we continue, drop a comment and let me know which city you're watching from tonight. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Hit that button, because what happens next is going to make your blood boil. Let's get into it. The town of Millbrook, Alabama, baked under a heavy July sun, the kind of heat that made the asphalt shimmer and the cicadas scream from the pines. It was 2:40 in the afternoon on a Thursday. Colonel Renata Voss drove her black Audi A6 down Route 14, windows up, air conditioning humming, a playlist of old Nina Simone records filling the cabin.
She wasn't in uniform. She was technically off duty, returning from her mother's 70th birthday party in Montgomery, headed back toward Fort Benning before catching a military transport to Washington the next morning for a briefing with senior leadership at the Pentagon. A briefing tied to classified logistics for an overseas deployment. She wore a simple sundress, sunglasses, and sandals. Nothing about her appearance screamed rank or authority. That was intentional. Renata had spent 18 years in the Army, learning that the loudest people in the room were rarely the most dangerous ones. She was 39 years old, sharp-eyed, and carried herself with the quiet precision of someone who had briefed generals and negotiated with foreign intelligence officers without raising her voice once. She had earned every star, every rank insignia, the hard way. Enlisted at 19, commissioned through officer candidate school at 23, deployed 3 times, promoted twice ahead of her peer group. She had done all of this as a black woman in rooms where she was, more often than not, the only one who looked like her. Route 14 outside Millbrook had a reputation. Locals called it the tax road, a stretch of highway where the Millbrook Police Department wrote an outsized number of citations to out-of-town drivers, particularly those in nicer cars. The department's budget depended heavily on fines and asset forfeiture revenue.
Hutchins approached from the rear, one hand resting on his holster, sunglasses reflecting the glare of the afternoon sun. He didn't come to the window right away. He stopped near the back pillar, studying the car, the plates, the woman inside. "License and registration," he said flatly. No greeting, no explanation. "Good afternoon, officer," Renata replied evenly. "May I ask why I was stopped?" "License and registration. I won't ask twice." Renata kept her tone calm. "My license is in my purse on the passenger seat. I'm going to reach for it now." She narrated the motion slowly, deliberately, the same way she'd once taught her nephew to survive a traffic stop. Hutchins leaned closer to the window, his eyes drifting past her toward the back seat, where a folded Army service uniform hung neatly on a hook, silver oak leaves visible on the shoulder boards. "What's that?" he asked, nodding toward it. "Some kind of costume?" "That is my uniform, officer," Renata said. "I'm a colonel in the United States Army." Hutchins let out a short laugh. "Step out of the vehicle." "I'm complying with your request for identification," Renata said, holding up her license through the window. "There's no need for—" "I said step out. Now."
Something in his voice had shifted, sharper, angrier, personal in a way that had nothing to do with a traffic violation. Renata's instincts, honed over nearly 2 decades of reading dangerous rooms, told her exactly what was happening. This was no longer about a broken taillight or a rolling stop.
This was about control. She opened the door slowly and stepped out into the heat. At 5'8", she wasn't physically imposing, but she stood with the kind of posture that came from years of formation drills and command presence. "Turn around. Hands on the hood," Hutchins ordered. "Officer, I'd like to understand the basis for this," Renata said, still calm. "I have not committed any traffic violation that I'm aware of." "You were weaving. You look nervous. And that uniform back there? Stolen valor is a felony in this state." "It is not stolen. It is mine. If you allow me to retrieve my identification card, this will be resolved in 30 seconds. Hutchins ignored her, grabbing her wrist and twisting it behind her back. The cuffs clicked shut, digging into her skin. Renata didn't resist, didn't raise her voice, but her eyes hardened into something cold and calculating. "You are making a serious mistake, officer," she said quietly. "I strongly advise you to verify my identity before this goes any further." "Save it," Hutchins muttered, pushing her against the hood of the Audi.
A second cruiser skidded onto the shoulder minutes later, kicking up a cloud of red dust. Deputy Chief Marv Callahan stepped out, a heavy-set man in his 50s with graying hair and the unmistakable posture of someone who had run this stretch of road for over 20 years without ever being questioned. "What do we have, Hutchins?" "Possible stolen valor, resisting, maybe fraud. Says she's a colonel. I don't buy it." Callahan walked over, looking Renata up and down with open skepticism. "A colonel, huh? You don't look like any colonel I've ever seen." "Deputy Chief," Renata said, reading his name tag. "My identification is in my purse on the passenger seat. It includes a Department of Defense Common Access card. I'd ask that you verify it before this situation escalates further." Callahan snorted and nodded to Hutchins. "Check the car. Let's see what she's really carrying." "You do not have my consent to search this vehicle," Renata said firmly. "We smell marijuana," Callahan said, tapping the hood, though the only scent in the air was Renata's perfume and the leather interior.
The plastic seat scorching against her skin, and pulled away toward the station. The Millbrook Police Department occupied a squat brick building near the town square. Hutchins marched Renata through the front doors, past a front desk staffed by a woman named Deborah, who had worked there for over 2 decades and had developed an unshakable instinct for spotting real trouble. "What do you have here?" Deborah asked, eyeing Renata's composed expression, the fine fabric of her sundress, the way she held her chin level despite the cuffs. "Fraud, stolen valor, resisting arrest," Callahan announced loudly. Deborah's eyes narrowed slightly, but she said nothing as they processed Renata. Fingerprints, mugshot, the works. Renata complied silently, filing away every detail, every name, every badge number.
"I want my phone call," she finally said, once they placed her in a holding cell. "Payphone's over there. 3 minutes, local calls only," Callahan said dismissively. "I need to call a number in Washington, D.C. It is a matter of national security." Callahan rolled his eyes. "Sure it is." "Deputy Chief," Renata said, stepping closer to the bars, her voice dropping into something colder and more precise. "I am due at a classified briefing at the Pentagon within 20 hours. If I fail to check in through my secure line within the next hour, protocol dictates that military police will initiate a search. That search will lead directly here. I strongly suggest you allow me to make my call." Deborah, standing nearby, finally spoke up. "Marv, let her call. Something's not right about this one." Callahan hesitated, glancing at the ID card still in his pocket, at the colonel's insignia stamped clearly across the top. Finally, grudgingly, he retrieved her phone from the property bag and handed it through the bars.
"One call. Speakerphone. No funny business." Renata's fingers moved with practiced precision, dialing a number she had memorized years ago. The phone rang once. "Pentagon Secure Switchboard. Identify." "Priority 1. Colonel Renata Voss. Authentication code Delta 79er. Patch me through to General Whitfield's office. Immediate. Callahan's jaw slackened. Hutchins, standing near the cell, stopped mid-sentence. Authentication confirmed, Colonel. Standing by. A brief hum of static, then a deep, familiar voice filled the small booking room. Voss? Where are you? You were due to check in 20 minutes ago. General, I am currently detained by the Millbrook Police Department in Alabama. I have been handcuffed, my vehicle searched without consent, and my uniform mishandled by Officer Dale Hutchins and Deputy Chief Marv Callahan. I am requesting immediate assistance. Silence stretched across the line, thick and suffocating. Then the general's voice dropped into something low and dangerous. Say that again? I am in a holding cell, sir, in Millbrook, Alabama. Stay on the line. Do not hang up. Then, muffled but audible, get me the provost marshal. Get me the FBI field office in Birmingham now. Callahan's face drained of color. The toothpick he'd been chewing fell silently to the floor. 12 minutes later, the low thrum of rotor blades rattled the windows of the station. 2 military helicopters passed low overhead, kicking dust into the parking lot. A convoy of black SUVs screeched to a halt outside, and the front doors burst open as federal agents and military police stormed in, weapons lowered but ready, vests marked FBI and MP. Hands where we can see them, now! Hutchins and Callahan froze, hands shooting into the air. A tactical team moved through the station with practiced efficiency, while a woman in a gray suit, Special Agent Reyes, FBI, approached the holding cell alongside a stern-faced Army Sergeant Major Deborah. Deborah fumbled with the keys, finally unlocking the cell. Renata stepped out, rubbing her wrists, the red marks from the cuffs already visible. The Sergeant Major snapped to attention and rendered a crisp salute. Colonel Voss, on behalf of the Army, my sincerest apologies, ma'am. Renata returned the salute. At ease, Sergeant Major. Are these the men? Yes, ma'am. Special Agent Reyes turned to Chief of Police Roy Danvers, who had just burst through the back entrance, red-faced and confused. We have a federal warrant. We're investigating deprivation of rights under color of law. And given what we found in your asset forfeiture records, likely racketeering as well. Danvers stared at Callahan. You arrested a colonel? She didn't look like one, Chief, Hutchins stammered. Reyes held up an evidence bag pulled from Hutchins' locker. Cash, jewelry, watches. Trophies, she said grimly. You weren't the first stop, Colonel. You were just the first one who fought back. By the time Renata was escorted out of the station, the bystanders video had already reached 2 million views. The footage, clear, damning, unedited, showed every second of the encounter. The compliance, the shove, the uniform thrown onto the trunk like garbage. Hashtags trended within hours. National news vans arrived by nightfall. Renata's phone buzzed constantly. Her brother, a lawyer in Atlanta, already threatening lawsuits. Friends and colleagues sending disbelief and support in equal measure. The governor's office issued a statement within 24 hours, distancing itself from the department and ordering a full state investigation. Local residents, many of whom had quietly endured years of predatory ticketing on Route 14, began coming forward with their own stories. The FBI's investigation uncovered a pattern stretching back nearly a decade. Planted evidence, inflated citations, and a ledger documenting cash skimmed from seized vehicles. Chief Danvers, Deputy Chief Callahan, and Officer Hutchins were indicted on multiple federal charges. At trial, the recovered body camera footage, nearly deleted but recovered from a backup server, played a decisive role. The jury heard Hutchins' voice clearly. That uniform's a costume. They heard Callahan. You don't look like any colonel I've ever seen. The defense attempted to paint Renata as combative, as someone who used her rank to intimidate. She calmly dismantled the argument on the stand. I have negotiated with foreign intelligence officers in hostile territory, she told the courtroom. I did not need to intimidate a traffic officer to feel powerful. I used my rank to survive an unlawful detention. Ask yourselves, if I had been a private citizen with no connections, would we be here today? The sentences came down hard. Chief Danvers received 22 years for racketeering and conspiracy. Deputy Chief Callahan received 15 years for deprivation of rights and evidence tampering. Officer Hutchins, the youngest of the three, received 6 years, a marginally reduced sentence due to his cooperation and an emotional, unscripted apology delivered before sentencing. The Millbrook Police Department was dissolved entirely, its duties absorbed by the county sheriff's office under new oversight requirements. The state legislature passed reforms mandating independent review of all asset forfeiture cases and permanent tamper-proof body camera storage. Renata Voss was promoted to Brigadier General 8 months later, taking on a new role overseeing institutional accountability programs across multiple Army installations.
Months later, Renata received an unexpected visitor. Dale Hutchins' father, a former Marine, standing awkwardly outside her office with his hat in his hands. "I raised him better than this," the older man said quietly. "I don't know where it went wrong." Renata studied his face. Not an excuse, just grief. "Your son made choices," she said gently. "Bad systems corrupt people who let them, but choices can still be unmade, in time." He handed her a folded note from his son, a simple, handwritten line. "You were right. It wasn't a costume. I'm sorry." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something.
Renata drove home that evening with the windows down, the note tucked into her glove box, the weight of the badge and the uniform both a little lighter than before. True power was never about a badge or a title. It was about composure under pressure and the refusal to back down from the truth. If this story moved you, hit that like button. It helps this channel grow. Share it with someone who needs to see justice win. And subscribe, because next week, another story is coming that you won't want to miss. See you in the next one.